Hi everybody. I pray you had a good day today. Our word for today is obedient. Um, in one of our prayer meetings, as we were going through our fast, I had this vision and I could see a key and I saw all these doors and I just saw the key go into one of the doors and it's just all these doors started opening. And so what God was showing me is that obedience is important to the doors that we are looking for God to open in our lives. It's like God is saying, "Okay, I'm going to give you these instructions. I want you to follow them, and then I want you to see what happens when you walk in obedience." And so we look at the topical encyclopedia. It says obedience refers to the act of submitting to the commands, laws, and will of God. It is a fundamental aspect of the Christian faith, reflecting a believer's commitment to God and His Word. Obedience is not merely about following rules, but it is an expression of love, trust, and reverence for God. It is a way that I show Him respect. It is a way that I show Him that I trust His will. I'm surrendering my will to Him. And that's something difficult to do because we won't want what we want, right? Like our flesh is telling us we want this, but we want to be in a place where we are in line with what God wants and what God is putting before us. And so I kind of thought about the scripture that says obedience is better than sacrifice. And we find that in 1 Samuel 15, and that's where we're going to go today. And so if we look at 1 Samuel 15 in the 15th chapter, this is where Saul, of course, is king, and God gives him instructions. He tells him he wants him to go and he wants him to fight and utterly destroy the Amalekites. Okay? So here's the thing with that. He wants him to utterly destroy the Amalekites. So after he's giving these instructions, he goes to fight. But when he goes to fight, he and the people of God, they take the king of the Amalekites and they King Agag, and they take the best sheep and the best of the oxen. Okay. So if you look in the 15th verse, um, so Samuel comes, God sends Samuel to Saul because, of course, Saul has not followed the instructions of God. And so he wants to give him a message. And when he goes, Saul is bragging about, oh, yes, we were obedient. We did what God wanted us to do. And so Samuel's like, yeah, but why do I hear these animals? And so Saul goes to tell him in that 15th verse, oh, we took, the sheep and the best of the sheep and the best of the oxen, and so that we can sacrifice to God, right? So he puts it on. We want to sacrifice to God, and and then we utterly destroyed everything else. Okay, so then I want to look at the word sacrifice before we move on. So we look at sacrifice in the topical encyclopedia. It says that it refers to the act of offering something valuable to God as an expression of worship, atonement, or thanksgiving. The concept of sacrifice is to deeply is deeply rooted in the ancient practices of the Israelites and is a central theme throughout the Bible. Okay, so sacrifice was made as an expression of worship, atonement, or thanksgiving. And so if you look at the commentary, um, one of the commentaries that I like to read is John Gill, and he describes that verse as Saul explaining that they wanted to give thanksgiving, they wanted to give gratitude to God for this victory in this battle, and so that's why they had these animals. Once he realized, okay, he's questioning about this. This may not be too good in the in the eyes of God. But let me kind of explain. We're gonna sacrifice these animals and we're gonna honor God. Okay, we're going to honor God. And so that's when Samuel does go into, eventually get into that 22nd verse where it says, have the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord. Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. And so, um, the commentary describes that as them choosing to do a spiritual, not spiritual, but a religious ritual over morality. Okay? God spoke, He gave specific instructions. And so when they did not follow those instructions, they tried to convince themselves that because sacrificing was something that God looked for. That was a way for them to express themselves, um, and to atone for their sins and to express their thanksgiving. That they tried to use that as a reason for why they operated in disobedience. And so, what God was showing me is this, because if you go on further, you'll learn that, Saul, because of his disobedience in this situation and another situation, he loses his kingdom. When we decide not to obey God, we are taking a chance of it costing us something, whether it be something small or whether it be something great. In his instance, it cost him his his kingdom, his throne. Okay. And so when I look at this, I think about how many times have we been given instructions by God? And because we weren't really comfortable with those instructions, or it's like, okay, I'll do this, but I'm not going to continue on with all of what God said. Like I can come back and I can convince myself that if I do this, I can offer this up to God and God will be satisfied. But God is not satisfied with me just offering up this random sacrifice um, that I've decided that's what I'm going to give. He is pleased when we are obedient to what He says for us to do. If we look at 1 John 3 and 22, it says, and whatsoever we ask, we receive of Him because we keep His commandments and do those things that are pleasing in His sight. I'm doing what is pleasing to Him. Jesus said in John 15 and 10, He says, if ye love me, keep my commandments. I want to express honor to Him. I want to express love to Him. I want to show Him through my worship, through my actions. Be obedient to what He's telling me to do. And we think that if we replace that obedience with some kind of religious ritual or something that we know that God usually looks for, we convince ourselves that it's okay that I didn't walk in obedience because hey, I'm praying, I'm seeking God. It made me think about um I was going through this situation and I was praying to God, and God, He showed me. I didn't want to believe that's what He was showing me, but He showed me what He wanted me to do. And because it was something I wasn't really comfortable with, or I wasn't, didn't exactly want to do, I made the decision like, okay, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to wait to do it. But I kept praying and I kept seeking. I kept, worshiping and all of that. And it was kind of like, I think God was looking and saying, like, I'm not going to change my mind. And yes, I love your worship. And yes, I love your praise. And yes, I love for you to pray to me. But that's not going to change walking in the obedience of doing what I've asked you to do. these things that you're doing right now are not going to open the door that you're looking for it to open. I've given you the instructions that you need for that. And so it was when I had a dream that I was like, okay, I need to do exactly what you told me to do. I need to walk in that obedience. And what God was showing me was that if you are obey here, then that opens the door to the next thing that I have for you. That opens the door to the next step so that you can get to where I want you to be. But if you walk in disobedience, not only are you not getting where I'm calling you to, but you are taking a chance of losing something because you're not being obedient. If you think about Adam and Eve, they disobeyed God and God's instruction, and they got kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and sin entered into the world. If you think about Moses, Moses was disobedient. God told him to speak to the rock, and he struck the rock again to get water. And so even though God allowed water to come out for the people, he was like, no, you're not going to enter into the promised land. Well, like if we think about the different people that did things that were outside of God's will, what did it cost them? And so when I'm thinking about being obedient, I'm thinking about the obedience of Christ. I'm thinking about walking in obedience. There's two things I need to think about. One, am I convincing myself that just because I'm doing something that would normally be considered a spiritual act towards God, am I using that to neglect obeying God's will and convince myself that God's okay with accepting that? And then two, am I willing to lose something because I refuse to walk in the obedience of Christ? Those are the things I need to think about. That think about Saul and how Samuel told him, he said, obedience is better than sacrifice. And what he was saying is, you being obedient to God is how you honor him, not by trying to sacrifice or doing a ritual that God didn't ask you to do in this situation. And so we have to be sure that the things that we are doing are the things that God told us to do, not things that we have made up to do so that we can neglect what God is really telling us to do. So I want to encourage you, because I really do believe that we are in a season where our obedience and our walk with God um, is very important and key to where God is trying to take us. And so we can cry out all day about, Lord, send me, and Lord, I want to be where you want me to be and do what you want me to do and say what you want me to say and all those things. But if I refuse to obey the instructions of the Lord, I'm going to be in the same situation, in the same mindset, in the same place until I make the decision that obedience is better than sacrifice. Have a good night.